Բարեկամներ, ողջունում եմ ձեզ, սկսում ենք ստատուս քոն։ Այսօր ես ուղիղ տեսակապով հյուրընկալել եմ Սլովակիայի նախկին փոխվարչապետ, Եվրամիությունում Սլովակիայի առաջին հանձնակատար Ján Figeľin. Ján, hello.
Greetings to Armenia. Hello, Georg.
Thank you very much for being our guest tonight. Ján is the first Slovak commissioner to the European Union. He is former Deputy Prime Minister of Slovakia, and currently he is the President of the European Forum for Religious Freedom. Ján is also part of the Forum of Armenian Associations of Europe, which has initiated recently an advocacy group for the protection of the Armenian Apostolic Church and Christianity in Armenia. And very recently they made a statement that was approved by all members of the group. Let me tell you who are part of that group. We have the former Prime Minister of France, François Fillon. We have Romano Prodi, former Prime Minister of Italy. We have Robert Amsterdam, international lawyer. We have Wolfgang Hummel, member of the Berlin Senate. We have John Abner, Director General of Christian Solidarity International Research Fellow. We have Luis Moreno Ocampo, first Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, and many others. Ján, if you don't mind, I will read the text of your statement for the audience to give them an idea what it is about.
Sure.
With deep concern, we are witnessing a series of developments taking place in Armenia that constitute a direct challenge to the Armenian Apostolic Church and its spiritual leader, His Holiness Catholicos of all Armenians, Garrigin II. In recent months, actions by the government of the Republic of Armenia have created an atmosphere of hostility and pressure against the Church. High-ranking clergymen, 2 archbishops and 1 bishop, as well as priests, respected philanthropists, and journalists have been detained on fabricated charges. We are witnessing unlawful actions directed against religious freedom and the constitution in Armenia. Particularly alarming are the encroachments against the modesty of Holy Echmiadzin, the spiritual and historical heart of the world's first Christian nation. Taking into account the gravity of these developments, we call upon individuals whose moral authority and public standing can contribute to the protection of the Church's mission, its spiritual leadership, and the fundamental values of Christianity in Armenia and throughout the world to condemn the unlawful steps taken by the authorities of Armenia. First of all, Ján, thank you for this kind of position that your group is taking. And the question is to you, what specifically pushed you and other signatories to issue such a statement? Why did you feel it was necessary to intervene now with this particular statement?
Thank you very much for, again, this invitation, and especially for this focus, because I think what's going on in Armenia is very important, not only for the country, but also for the region and Europe, our Europe as a community. Armenia is a democratic, free country. It joined, I think, in 2001, Council of Europe, very important, we say, watchdog of democracy, rule of law, and human rights. This year, Armenian Parliament adopted law on future accession to the European Union. Again, something very important for our coexistence, for living together, working together. And that requires some sort of compatibility, like-mindedness, the same level of basic issues, including rule of law, human rights, and protection of human dignity. And I mention it because this is very sensitive. And on the other side, what goes on in Armenia, what you know in details and we see from a distance, is alarming. is really causing a concern because practices, especially against Armenian Church, Apostolic Church, are unacceptable legally, politically, and ethically. And I say it as a man who lived half of life in communist Czechoslovakia, and half of my life I live in freedom, fortunately, thanks God. And the change from totalitarian autocratic regime with a lot of limitations and even persecution of Christians or believers or dissidents was very much connected with faith, because totalitarian state does not like other authorities, foreign authorities. And so our generation and many others have been labeled as traitors, as those who collaborate with foreign powers like Vatican or the Western countries. This was basically not true, but of course, faith means we share with like-minded people all over the world. Faith is the deepest expression of human dignity. And I say it because Christian dissent was the main force against the communist regime in Slovakia, in Poland, even in East Germany or Hungary. And therefore, we achieved so-called spiritual or peaceful revolution in 1989 due to non-violent resistance. So this is good for a country with Christian origin, with Christian culture, even Christian dissent when needed. So for the state, it is important to respect country's culture, identity, and roots. Without that, government or decision makers are cutting the roots, diminishing the cohesion in society, the identity, and overall perspective. So from our point of view, it's on one side warning, on the other side encouragement to protect freedom of religion and also protect freedom or autonomy of the Apostolic Church, because it should be protected by the Constitution, also by the European Convention on Human Rights, which is part of the Council of Europe commitments, and also internationally, broadly or globally, by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, because Armenia is the member of the United Nations. I say these three levels or three important defining documents as a very important framework to build Armenia as credible, democratic, just society and credible partner in building Europe of free, sovereign, and democratic nations. We are concerned that Apostolic Church, under the guise of protection of sovereignty or fight against corruption or state security, attacks top leaders of the Apostolic Church. This was the practice, as I said, in the past under communist regime. This is still visible in many countries where religious freedom is under attack. This is detrimental not only for the church, but for the whole country and for the whole nation.
Ján, you mentioned the communist regime, and we also are making parallel with the Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks have been attacking the church. The first one of the first targets for Bolsheviks was the church, the Armenian church as well, including the Armenian church. And now we hear some analysts, some experts make those parallels between the Bolsheviks, and that's why some people call this government neo-Bolshevik government. well, it can be a little bit funny, but there are probably there's some hidden agenda behind. But I would like to ask you about the European perspective of what is happening in Armenia, why you think it's happening, why you think the Armenian government is attacking its own church. Armenian church is part of our DNA, it's part of our Armenian identity. It's not just a religious institution that we can cherish, of course, like many other institutions, but it was more than religious institution. So why you think, what is your perspective from Europe, that the Armenian government is targeting the church?
Maybe you know better than me, as I said, details of your daily realities in Yerevan and in the country. But there is a saying then that when you go to the desert for a long time, like Jews in the biblical times, when 40 years in, then you need another 40 years to get out. In case of Soviet story or history, it is even longer. Walk into desert, and desert is an image of country with bloody rule and ideology instead of religion, and of course a very violent oppression of any opposition. Reality is called gulag, or deportation of nations, to uproot people, especially those who are intellectuals, who know a lot, who remember a lot, who are active. So all that serves to appease any different opinions, but actually it makes country very poor and eliminates any plurality. And democracy is quite opposite, because it invites all to take part on power. Democracy is for people, through people,
By people,
with people. And therefore, it is important to stop these negative trends. Secondly, as you said very rightly, Apostolic Church in Armenia is part of nation's DNA, and part of its identity. Identity of Armenia is unimaginable without Armenian crosses, without Armenian ethics and culture, which stems from these old and vital roots. So this is also another very negative, not only image, but tendency towards future, because future, reasonable people say, starts today. But wise people know that future started yesterday, because we don't start from the green meadow, from zero. We have legacy. Our identity is growing generation after generation. And it would be very detrimental to eliminate the role of church from society, from public life, and especially to cut the connection between religious leadership, and grassroots people. According to Armenian constitution, church has right for its autonomy, and it is guaranteed. So acting against the constitution is acting against people and against the country. Why this is so? I think that part of the reason, usually in Eastern Europe, including Central Europe, is this post-Bolshevik, post-communist mentality, which was going on deeply into fabric of society, relations, families, communities. And it's not easy to get rid of it, because, communism simplified life. everything was organized. There were so-called rights and so-called duties, but people were not free, which is the base of human dignity. Freedom is much more demanding. It requests participation. It requests responsibility of everybody. But also it confirms human dignity. And therefore, what is going on there in Armenia is not only against the church and clergy, it is about dignity of people. And I am concerned because consequences will be detrimental not only for the country, but for overall perception and living in Europe. We have to care about our history, our roots, our values, and also show solidarity when this is not the case in one or other country. Maybe one moral comment. We see a lot of evil. In your region, war in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, but also ideologies on rise in the West. And what I want to say that evil is influential and even in a way successful because it has many influential and omnipresent, everywhere present allies. And 3 allies are very influential and they are actually siblings. The first one is indifference. If I don't care because it is far away, it's not my cause, it is not my responsibility, indifference. The second sibling is ignorance. If I don't know, if I don't learn, I am not interested. This is ignorance. And the third sibling of evil or ally of evil is a fear, human fear. When I'm afraid to say something, to sign a petition, to stand up and to oppose, because then something may happen to me or there will be a revenge or whatever. Therefore, I call upon you and especially your viewers, your communities, and thank you for this opportunity, that there are also allies of goodness, engagement, when I am active, not indifferent. It is education, studying, learning what's going on and what is the truth, what is important in life and in international relations. And the third one is courage, simple but very important human courage to live in freedom. So this is my reflection, and of course I wish you that this lesson is learned and applied for the sake of people in Armenia and of course Apostolic Church.
Ján, you mentioned quite interesting dimensions like indifference, ignorance, fear, courage, some things that we have to face, things that we have to have, like courage. May I ask you a little bit provocative question about why then your colleagues from the European Union, although we are former statesmen, but why then embassies, other diplomatic missions in Armenia and elsewhere are indifferent and are ignorant at what is going on in Armenia?
I hardly can comment on their behalf, but I am not happy with what you say, if that's so in Yerevan or around. Part of the problem is that there is wrong perception or understanding of religious freedom. And the second may be that we need to speak more about it, which is your case. Thank you again. The first problem where I would like to dwell a bit attention is that religious freedom is a litmus test of all human rights. All human rights. Religious freedom is not above other rights, but it's very central. When this is respected, other rights have a chance. When religious freedom is not respected, there are problems and consequences for other rights. Because religious freedom is defined by international law and most of democratic constitutions as freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, and freedom of spirituality, belief, religion. The first one is human rationality. We are homo rationalis. At the same time, we are homo moralis, to guess, to make decision what is good, what is bad. And the third is to religare, to build community with the like-minded believers and faith people of faith. So this is important as we understand this composition for all people, whether they are believers or non-believers, because it is also for those who are not Christians, who simply have their belief, non-religious belief. And therefore, it is important to defend religious freedom for all, for people from A to Z, for atheists up to Zoroastrians. So it's not only Christians, Jews, or Muslims, all people. And therefore, diplomacy, ambassadors should understand that violation of religious freedom is a violation of central human right and has consequences. Because if this internal freedom, most sensitive freedom, is not respected, then I am sure, and you can see, there is disregard to freedom of opinion, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of property. This was communism, actually. It starts with disrespect of forum internum, my reason, my conscience, which should be in absolute freedom. And then when we go to forum externum, there are some limits, like public security, public order, public health. So religious freedom may have some limits, but actually internal freedom and freedom of the religious communities must be protected, because this is the basis. And the second, some embassies maybe just play politics more than diplomacy, some interests which may build tendencies in the region. I don't know, but for diplomacy, rules are very important. And I mentioned 3 levels. Constitution of Armenia, which means also rule of law, European Convention on Human Rights, which is located or protected by the Council of Europe, where Armenia is full member, and then International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Again, Armenia is full member, and this covenant or convention is a binding convention for Armenia and us all under United Nations. So my appeal goes to all ambassadors in Yerevan and diplomacies around to care about religious freedom, to care about religious autonomy as a part of this freedom, and then, of course, for all human rights and rule of law in Armenia.
Ján, and my last question, we have 2-3 minutes to answer, please. Okay. Did you get any feedback after your statement? And what are next steps of the forum regarding this position?
I am in close contact with Honorary Consul of Armenia to Slovakia, Ashot Grigorian, Dr. Grigorian, who is quite active. He is actually even chairman of this European Forum of Armenian Associations. So we are often in dialogue, and I get a lot of information. I meet Armenian representatives on different international fora, conferences. They have also religious representation nearby in Vienna, in Austria. So what I would like to say is we need to intensify dialogue with Armenia and about Armenia, but for Armenia, which means for its freedom, its identity, its good and common good. As Europeans, we should embrace and work for, because injustice anywhere means injustice everywhere. These are words of late Martin Luther King. The other message which I like from him, from the man who was assassinated, but his message against segregation was winning in the United States. He said, "We would get you on our side and our victory would double." Mm-hmm. This is the sense of spiritual revolution. This is the sense of getting people on the side of justice, common good, human dignity of all. Because then the opponents or the minus is transformed into a plus. So this is double change. And to achieve it is not easy, but it's transformative. We achieved it in Central Europe. I remember I was part of it. This was and this is our cause or responsibility for future, because many people pay the highest price for our freedom. For example, and that's my very personal message to you and to all, my uncle, very young man, 26 years old, Ján Figeľ, was killed in years of Stalin by Stalinist secret service of Czechoslovakia. So he paid the highest price as opponent of the regime, and I got freedom, and I even became first EU commissioner after I was chief negotiator on accession. So it was a miraculous change in our life, in our family. But I remember that somebody, my uncle, paid the highest price for what I have and what I could achieve. That's a dream which can happen and be fulfilled also in case of Armenia. So I wish you unity around the basic values, around your culture, your identity, your faith, which was so inspirational, but also resolute to survive as a small nation among many, forces and big forces. So stick to this wisdom, serve the truth, because you will be free only under truth, and truth will serve the country in these critical moments. I wish, again, what I said, active citizenship, education which is lifelong, and courage to go for human dignity of all, including your top religious leaders of the Apostolic Church of Armenia.
Thank you very much, Ján. Thank you for this important message and important words that we will share with our large audience. And I wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
The same to you. Thank you. Blessed Christmas and fruitful, creative and peaceful New Year.
Thank you very much, Ján. Thank you again. Սիրելի բարեկամներ, շնորհակալություն նաև ձեզ մեզ դիտելու համար։ Մնացեք Եվրամեդիա 24-ի եթերում։ Հաջողություն ձեզ։